The NBA Cup is here. 4 games, big stakes, and potentially Willie Green's job on the line. Let's cover it in Thursday's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans and NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, here with you on this Thursday, and we've got the NBA Cup schedule for the Pelicans released. I'm going to tell you why this is so important for New Orleans, and in particularly Willie Green, while looking at the schedule. And then as the schedule is going to be released on Thursday, today, depending on when you're listening to this, there's been no leaks of the Pelicans in national TV. What does that say about how people view the team? And then we're going to circle back to the NBA Cup and why it's so important this year for New Orleans. We got a lot to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner, so visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. And if you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. I see y'all, I promise, even if I'm not always commenting down there. And, of course, don't forget you can watch Locked On Pelicans along with Locked On Saints, Locked On LSU, and Locked On SEC over at the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. You get a 2-hour Locked On block starting at 10 a.m., Locked On Pelicans at 10:30 a.m., and then also now at 5:30 p.m. every single weekday. So let's get into this one. The NBA Cup schedule being announced here. The Pelicans are in Group B. So the way the NBA Cup works, if you don't remember, is there is group play. And all of these games in group play are regular season games. There's just it's just a little lagniappe added on to these. These games have extra importance for trying to advance in the NBA Cup. So you play 4 games in your group, and then the top 8 teams will advance to the knockout rounds, plus 2 wild cards as well. So you get, it's the top 8 teams overall. There's 6 groups. You get the 8 kind of group winners and then 2 wild card teams. Following that, 8 teams advance to the knockout rounds. And then from there, it's single elimination until you determine a champion. The quarterfinals are played in NBA arenas, and then the semifinals and championship game of the Emirates NBA Cup are played in Las Vegas. The teams that make it to the championship game play an extra game that does not count towards the standings. That's the only thing that's kind of different about this, is that final championship game does not count towards the standings at all, but every other game does. That's why you'll see kind of like a hold on some of these team schedules when it's all released a little bit later when it comes down to it, and also why they're only playing Western Conference teams until you play one in the championship game from the other side of things. That's the only time you'll see East versus West here. So the schedule is as such: October 31st, Halloween at the Clippers in Los Angeles. November 14th at home versus the Lakers. November 21st at Dallas. And then November 26th at home versus the Memphis Grizzlies. That is the group right there: the Clippers, the Lakers, the Mavericks, and the Grizzlies. It's a tough group, I'm not going to lie. But if you win your group, you're looking at a potential trip to Las Vegas, extra money for the players, a national spotlight too. We'll get into that in the next segment here, because I do think that is kind of important to look at with New Orleans right now. I love the NBA Cup. It's a little bit gimmicky, but we've seen that teams actually try and win and try and play. So this is a compressed, high-stakes environment that does mimic the playoffs a little bit. You're going to see if coaches can get their teams locked in mentally, knowing that these games matter a little bit more. Maybe you need to come up with a little bit more of a game plan for your opponents. So if the Pelicans fall flat in the NBA Cup against good teams, admittedly, right? Dallas is going to be a playoff team. All of these we're expecting are going to be playoff teams. You want to come out strong in this. It's going to show if this group is ready. It's going to show if Willie Green's ready to, kind of take this group to the next level. So If you fall flat on your face, that's not going to look good kind of for the future of this team in the direction that they want to go. I've talked a lot about the Pelicans need to eventually, not yet, but eventually choose a path, choose a direction that they need to go on. They're not lost yet. They're not directionless yet. They have multiple in front of them. They just haven't chosen where to go yet, but at least you can see what options are available. I do think the NBA Cup, given that this wraps up in mid-December, can really be a way to determine, basically be a benchmark for the Pelicans and where they're going to go this season. If you succeed in the NBA Cup, if you get out into the knockout stages, whether as a wild card or by winning the group, that's a very, very encouraging sign to me because these 4 other teams are going to take this seriously. You see guys not rested on NBA Cup nights. The different courts and everything kind of add a little bit to it as well. I love it. It's gimmicky, but I absolutely love it. I think it's a lot of fun here. If Willie Green gets out of the group stages, his job security is going to look really good for the rest of the season and potentially going forward. They can make it to Vegas and win the thing or just get to the finals. I think that would look really, really good for Willie Green and what the Pelicans are going to try and accomplish here. You're going to need Zion available and leading. You're going to need Trey Murphy catching fire. You're going to need guys like Kevon Looney to kind of set the tone. You can kind of view the NBA Cup as a way to almost be an early rallying cry for this team. I do think they should absolutely focus on it. They're going to focus on it because they want to win games because the games count towards the standings. But this is the type of thing that they really want to leave their mark on, in my opinion. You can't really drop one of those first 2 games and totally expect to advance. You've got to be just sharp and ready to go, and your players playing the best. This is on the coaching staff to get these guys ready for it, to have the right game plan. Again, I think it's a big benchmark for the remainder of the season. If New Orleans goes 0-4, 1-3. They went 1-3 a year ago after going 3-1 2 years ago and making a run to Las Vegas to the quarterfinals where they got stomped by the Lakers. But something like that kind of indicates that you're going to be okay here. And if you look at kind of the bracket for this last NBA Cup, right? The Thunder, the quarterfinals were the Thunder, Mavericks, Rockets, and Warriors. That's 4 teams that were all in the playoffs, right? The Thunder were the 1 seed, the Rockets were the 2, the Warriors were the 7th seed. What was the other team? The Mavericks, finished 10th and didn't get into the playoffs, but lost in the play-in tournament. But, they won a game in the play-in tournament before losing to the Memphis Grizzlies for that 8th spot. If you look at it in the East, right, it's a pretty similar thing. Bucks, Magic, Knicks, and Hawks. Those were all basically playoff teams last year. The Hawks lost in the play-in tournament, fine, but that is a group of teams that were at least competitive and trying to win. This is a good barometer of at least making the play-in tournament, but more likely than not, like 75% of it is making the actual postseason and not even being in the play-in tournament in the first place. So winning this does feel like there is some importance placed on it, in my opinion, given that this tends to be a barometer for success later on in the year too. You get swept out of there. We saw how it basically went for New Orleans this season. We could look at it for some of those other teams, the teams that did not do well, like particularly bad in the NBA Cup, not even close to snipping the playoffs. This is why this matters. This is why I like the high stakes environment that it creates and does put a lot of pressure on this team and head coach Willie Green. And as I did a show on this the other day, the everydayers have kind of already heard this. If you go 0-4 in this, you've got to make some dramatic changes. You got to pick your path, right? And that path is probably, we're not going to be good this year. We need to sell off some pieces and go through a little mini quick rebuild, refresh. And that might mean firing head coach Willie Green, unless you feel, hey, we still can go for it. But if your coach couldn't navigate you through this, you've got to make a change right there. So we'll get back to the NBA Cup in the 3rd segment here, but I want to switch next to some of the leaks from the schedule that have already come out, and that has to do with the national TV schedule, and you're not seeing the Pelicans really anywhere when it comes to that. Let's break that down. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day. It's a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you the deals that you want on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. I'm taking the Saints to win more than 6.5 games at plus 240. That feels like good odds to basically go more or less 500, and I think they can do that. I like the odds right there. For MVP, give me Lamar Jackson at plus 430. That seems great. I think he's going to be having a huge year here, and you can do this all on August 26th, FanDuel Futures Day. So visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only over at FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. And for your second listen, look for the Locked On NBA podcast. There is no off season, so Doug, Matt, and Hayes are keeping you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's keep talking about some of the schedule-related things here. And we're going to do a full breakdown of the schedule on the Friday show. I'm going to give you, why the start's going to matter, predicted record from all of that. We'll look at the toughest stretches, the easiest stretches, the back-to-backs, the rest advantages, the rest disadvantages, all of that true rest advantage, which is something that doesn't get talked about enough. We're going to cover it all on Friday's show. Monday's show is still going to be schedule-related, though, but how the Pelicans can really kind of change the perception around the team when it comes to that. Because look, the perception is not great. We are seeing a lot of national TV games start to get leaked out. We've seen the opening night schedule, Christmas, and the NBA Cups TV, the national TV schedule for that, officially unveiled. And guess what? The Pelicans aren't listed once. This early slate of games coming out on national TV tells us exactly how the league views the Pelicans. Not a draw, not a guaranteed ratings team, and basically not worth watching or scheduling in October or November for those prime slots. You look at teams like the Thunder, the Rockets, even the Warriors, Lakers, and Clippers. All of those teams are getting multiple appearances in some of these really kind of marquee games, right? Whereas the Pelicans, we don't see them at all in this. The schedule makers, the TV schedule makers, I should say, are basically saying we don't believe this team will be relevant by Christmas. I've talked about the perception problem that the Pelicans are facing right now, even if they could be good this year. That's it right here, right? National TV games drive narratives, and if you're not seen, you're not part of the conversation. And free agents and other agents also do notice this stuff a little bit. It just reinforces the negative perception around the team right now. And this is where it kind of ties back into the NBA Cup a little bit too. Those games are national TV. It's basically a cheat code for visibility if you can make it to the knockout stages. If you get to Vegas, that's instantly 2 national TV games. That makes you relevant. We'll talk more about that in the next segment here on Locked On Pelicans. But right now, on opening week, right? And here's the thing. There's even more national TV games than there were before. Even more, and you're not getting any of that, right? You have Amazon Prime, you have ESPN, you have Peacock, you also have NBC when it comes to all of that. Those are the national TV partners with NBA TV, and we don't really count that one right now because that's still kind of the local broadcast. But the opening slate of games, nope. Tip-off week on Prime, it's Celtics-Knicks, it's Timberwolves-Lakers, no Pelicans there, right? On NBC on opening night, it's Rockets at Thunder, it's Warriors at Lakers. Some of this is also, you've got to have, a an East Coast or Central Time game and then a West Coast game to kind of stagger everything. But even on ESPN with, supposedly a healthy Zion Williamson, it's Cavs at Knicks, Spurs at Mavs, Thunder at Pacers, Nuggets at Warriors. This is not something that New Orleans is involved in. And then on the most marquee day of all, right? Christmas Day, it's Cavs at Knicks, Spurs at Thunder. That game's going to be fun. Mavs at Warriors, Rockets at Lakers, and then Timberwolves versus the Denver Nuggets here. You don't even really get a lot of East teams in this mix here. But then on MLK Day, another day that's really used to showcase the league. It's Bucks versus Atlanta. It's OKC at Cleveland. It's the Mavs versus the Knicks. It's the Celtics at the Pistons. The Pelicans not involved in any of these early kind of marquee day games that the league puts out. And that's just a sign of this team not living up to the potential that they've had in the Zion Williamson era. You know, this was a team that was a national TV darling when Zion first started, and then the injuries just quickly popped up, and it's been going kind of downhill ever since. People just do not believe in this team, and I think this is part of the reason why they brought in someone like Joe Dumars to hopefully help shift the narrative, even if that certainly has not happened so far this off season. But at least they're kind of bringing in someone who has some of the cachet in terms of name recognition and some of the things that he's accomplished here. But certainly you're seeing everybody not believe in this Pelicans team. Everybody. The win total say it. Vegas says it. You know, you would hope that the schedule makers know that this team could be excited. This is people kind of within the league talking to their partners, being like, these teams are going to be good, we think, right? Like, you know, you've got Cooper Flag in there in Dallas, but they're not projected to be like a great team. Yet that's 3 national TV games on those kind of marquee day things. They're on Christmas Day, they're on MLK Day, and they're on there in opening week on national TV. Even the Pacers are in there, right? And they're dealing with some injuries. And you're seeing them on that opening night on ESPN or that opening week on ESPN. It hurts to see that, but it just kind of speaks to the state that the franchise is kind of stuck in at this point in time. And that's why I've been talking about perception a lot. The Pelicans really need to change the perception around this franchise. You know, some of the moves they've made in the offseason have certainly not done it. I do think national media is not understanding that Jordan Poole move at all and are just kind of rushing to clown it. Yeah, it looks a little confusing on the surface, but once you actually spend like a little bit of time looking at the salary cap and thinking about it, that deal makes a whole lot more sense, I think. You know, the trade for Derek Queen, that's a bit of a different story, but I think, you know, some stuff with that got taken a little bit as hyperbole and then run with some of that. I wouldn't have made the trade, certainly. You know, it could work out more likely to backfire. But when people are like, this is the worst trade I've ever seen, literally after we went through the Luka Doncic stuff a couple months ago, is frankly absurd to me. And again, it's been very hyperbolic. Some of the stuff reported has not been, you know, fully accurate with things. We've seen kind of conflicting things come out too. That, you know, it's just led to some of the confusion and everything around this team and what the direction and what the plan is. And it just speaks to them, you know, not having the plan just yet, not picking the road to go down just yet. You can question which path they should go down. And if they go down a certain one, whether it's a rebuild or going for it, you can question that. But at least they have one and you kind of see what they're looking to do. Right now, it's just the big question is, what are they doing? That's why you're seeing them described as directionless. Being directionless, even if it's not quite that, is going to imply a really negative perception around you. Once they pick a direction, whether it's going for it or whether it's going to be going through a rebuild, that perception will change to this, like, this is the right thing. They figured out what they're doing. We can kind of see the plan. Now they've just got to go out and execute all of that, and we'll see if they're capable of doing that. But at least you'll have that direction soon enough. If they're going for it and trying to make the playoffs and be good, it's probably because they're having some success in winning games, and you'll slowly start to see things shift a little bit, and people maybe will be backtracking. We'll see on some of the stuff that they've set. So coming up next, let's get back to the NBA Cups here. I want to connect the first and the second segment. We're going to connect the dots in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. That's coming up here next. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well and become an everydayer. That means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. Don't forget, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network as well. And for your second listen, Locked On Saints with Ross Jackson. Pelicans. Saints going through more practices. They're still out on the West Coast. He's covering everything you want to know about the black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So let's connect the dots here, talking about the importance of the NBA Cup and the negative perception around this team right now. If the Pelicans want to shift the narrative, the easiest thing they can probably do is make the finals, semifinals, win the whole thing of the NBA Emirates Cup, right? Like at least make a deep run. That is probably the fastest, easiest, cleanest way to flip national perception. Go back 2 years ago to the Indiana Pacers. Nobody was thinking about Indiana before November. Then they light it up in the NBA Cup. Tyrese Halliburton puts on a show. They're in Vegas, and suddenly they're a team that casual fans know, and that kind of became a darling of NBA media. The Cup, truthfully, became their identity a little bit for that season, I think, and was then kind of a springboard to really good things happening for them later. They realized, hey, we are a very good team. Maybe we need to kind of make some bigger moves. All of a sudden, they trade for Pascal Siakam, and look at where they are, a year ago before ownership got in the way and they kind of just lost that team in the wake of the Tyrese Halliburton injury and losing the NBA Finals. The Pelicans could do the exact same thing here, in my opinion. Imagine Zion playing big in a semifinals game, not a no-show like they did against the Lakers a couple of years ago, right? Imagine Trey Murphy having kind of a breakout 40-point game, something that we know he is capable of doing. Imagine Herb Jones locking down a star wing player in Las Vegas as the Pelicans win to go to the finals, right? You have instant highlights, instant buzz, and then the next time NBC, ESPN talks about the Pelicans, it's not necessarily about the injuries and the weird offseason moves they've made. It's, they won. Maybe Joe Dumars was on to something here, right? Especially if Jordan Poole has a 40-point game. You're going to hear that narrative around the team completely change. And I think that's the easiest way for the Pelicans to do it this season is by winning the NBA Cup. That's going to be wins against the Lakers, the Clippers, the Dallas Mavericks, and the Memphis Grizzlies. Those are four teams that not everybody, but most people think are going to be better than New Orleans. You win those games, that says something. You're going up against other good teams in the knockout stages and you win. That's not stuff that you can ignore. And I guarantee you, talking heads are going to then shift their tone around about New Orleans really quickly. But it's also, I think, a way to set the tone internally. If Willie Green can get the team to really lock in for NBA Cup games, that sends, a message. That says we are serious, we're trying to win. Is that the narrative around the team right now? Maybe that's what they're saying internally, but do they even believe it when there's so much outside noise? You can say, tune that all out, don't listen to it, but that's easier said than done. So this team is still looking for this kind of identity that they have been missing, and maybe you can kind of galvanize it together through the NBA Cup, and I think that's going to be realistic, right? When you're playing the Dallas Mavericks, they're going to be known for their defense this coming season. Beat them. You need your offense to be good. Beat them. Do that, right? If you figure out a good offensive game plan, they're definitely beatable. Clippers, same thing, are going to kind of be known as a defensive team here. If you can beat them, that's what you see, right? The Lakers are going to be kind of all offense, no defense, in my opinion. But the Pelicans need to get their defense back. So the way you're going to beat the Lakers is either by outscoring them in just a shootout, so you need a lot of offense, or by your defense being good and really slowing them down. Memphis is still a little bit TBD on what they're going to look like. Their offseason was very strange to me, but they're going for flexibility over potentially competitiveness, at least this season, until they make a later move. But this is going to set the tone for the rest of the season for New Orleans, in my opinion. I think by the end of the NBA Cup, maybe by the end of the group stages, right, we're going to know what direction the team should go down. We're going to know what path that they should be going down. We don't know if they'll pick that path, but probably by what's the final game? It's like that night before. Is that the night before Thanksgiving? That Wednesday before, I think. We're going to know if they're going to be a playoff or a play-in tournament team or not by that period of time. I think, especially when we get the full schedule released on Thursday, we're going to have a much clearer picture of the route that this team should go and can thus start talking about all of that, right? Like say, hey, this is a team that should really be competing, or this is a team that needs to sell off pieces. Maybe that means a Zion trade. Maybe it doesn't, but they need to do something different. And you're kind of planning not for this coming year anymore, the remainder of it, but for the season after that. So it's a real good way to be a bench, to have a benchmark for where this team is and give the front office, enough data that they need to go down the road that they need to go down, to choose the path that they need to go down, and to make that decision that then doesn't leave them directionless. At least have a direction, whatever that direction might be. Whether or not I or you, the listener, watcher of the show, agree with it, pick the path, execute, figure it out from there, and show the results, because that's what this is going to be. It's a results-oriented business. So whatever path you eventually pick, and I think the NBA Cup is going to kind of be the benchmark for that, you got to then do it from there. So what do you think about the NBA Cup? Is it a good benchmark? Do you like the schedule for it, the home games, the away games? I do think getting, the Lakers at home is good, the Grizzlies at home. Of those, I think those can be some of the easier ones to win. Certainly the Grizzlies, the Lakers won. Rather play LeBron and Luka in New Orleans than in LA. At Dallas, given that I don't know what they're going to be, feels like it could be easier. The Clippers are going through some change too and are one of the oldest teams in the league. I kind of like the way the schedule broke in the NBA Cup for New Orleans in terms of the 2 home games, the 2 away games. Also, let me know, do you like the different courts, the weird courts? I like the ones from 2 seasons ago versus the more uniform design the past year, but I do dig the weird NBA Cup courts. So that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. We are going to do the full schedule breakdown tomorrow. We'll look at the toughest stretches, the easiest runs, the total national TV count, back-to-backs, if there's where there's true rest advantages. That's not what people think it is. It's going to tell us a lot about how the season could play out. So as always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. This is the Locked On Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Appreciate y'all listening. Schedule breakdown tomorrow. See y'all next time.